only thing I'm trying to figure out is when we do this, watch again, it gives us what looks like presenter view and then quits that. Watch carefully. Yep.
Maybe because you're sharing your screen, it doesn't want to.
Am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Well, I guess I have to share my screen though, don't I?
Yeah. Unless you'd like me to share my screen with the newest version, and then you can just I'll be your, clicker.
We could do that, but I've got notes. Well, I can't see the notes.
No, but the slides are generally the same. It was just the last slide that I forgot to add my own little name and stuff. That's the difference.
Yes.
So if you run alongside
I'm sorry
me
to
with
remind
your
you of this, Brianna, but you were important. You were most certainly important enough to have your name on the
presentation. Thank you.
You know.
Thank
so,
you.
okay, we have 3 minutes here.
Do you want to try that? Because you can still have your slides up, and then you'll be able to see the full Zoom and which slide I'm on, and then you can coordinate your notes with that.
But I'll have to ask you to make to move the things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Only problem is if we have to skip ahead on things or skip behind on things, Otherwise, Brianna, let's try that.
Okay.
Let me see if we can make you a co-host. Yes, you're a co-host.
No, she is a co-host. I made her co-host.
We're both co-host.
Yeah.
I think. Good. Okay. So I'll get back into Zoom. No, that's back to meeting.
On the bottom, you just say stop sharing. It'll say stop sharing.
I thought I'd done that already. I don't see it. This is PowerPoint, not Zoom. Okay. Come on. No, Brianna, I don't see it. I think we better just go with what we've got.
Okay.
Good.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, I'm less comfortable than having you run it, but I can't figure out how to do that in a minute and a half. So
on the bottom, there's a green thing usually that says stop share.
Yeah, but I don't. Oh, here we go. It's on the top. Okay, your turn. We got 1 minute. Okay, we're up on the screen. That looks good. And these slides are the same as the ones I've been working with, except for the last one?
Correct.
Great.
Are you good to go?
Oh, I think so. See, does this look good to you?
Yeah, it looks good.
Excellent.
It looks good. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Today, the 10th day of our Afrolongevity education, Afrolongevity movement educational program. And today we have Paul Spiegel. I have a very strong relationship with Paul Spiegel. We're here today because of Paul Spiegel. I have to chip that in before we start. When I started TFFDS in 2018, I love sharing this story. I've said it numerous times in different stages, in different events. The reason is that most people don't know some of the wars and struggles that I've passed through, and some of them stemming from either racism when we started in the States, and a lot of people trying to discourage me, thinking that I'm not worthy to start a movement, an international movement like TAFFD. So after the death of my first CEO, or second CEO, Christopher K. Halley, And when he was alive, he told me that whenever I have any issue, that I should reach out to the then president of Lifeboat Foundation or Paul Spiegel. So I got overwhelmed. I wanted to stop, close, end everything about TFFDS. It was my intention to end everything about TFFDS because I felt like the universe tends to be against me, or whatever I do, people try to play me down, and it was so heavy and hectic. And people try to tell me that my legal documents weren't okay, that I'll get into legal complexities. And one day, that was when, after I was kidnapped in Nigeria, I reached out to Paul, and he arranged immediately for us to meet. And that day, when we were on call, there was a blackout. The power went off, and I was really embarrassed. I said, "Oh, what's going on?" He said, "No, don't worry, don't worry. Sometimes it's always like that. The most important thing is that you're courageous." So he encouraged me. He asked me about my years, how old I was, and everything. He said, "But look, there are people in the United States, 20, 19 years, running bigger corporates. So you need to be strong and you must not give up." He encouraged me. And after that day, my laptop crashed. He sent me some money to fix my laptop, and he encouraged me to never give up, right? I remember I was just kidnapped. I lost everything. He told me, "You must not stop TFFDS. You must keep moving." So I continued, and here we are today. Few days, 2 years later, I launched Afrolongevity. And then the day of the launch, he wanted to come, but he couldn't make it. Something came up. He promised to come to the fourth International Longevity Alliance event, which was the ILSA 2023. That was the first ILSA event. And when he came, he was so excited about the things that I've built over the years. He was excited that I never gave up. And I was the one that introduced him on that day. And after reading out his profile, he used to be very shy, so he was like, "Oh my God, what is going on here? This guy again." So, and there is something that stood out. After that day, he became our legal advisor without charging anything. He was there helping me to put things together, review some of my legal documents, encouraging me to move forward. And he has been very supportive. And most of you don't know how huge he is, So, and he sits in the legal advisory board of TFFDS and Afrolongevity. He attends our board meeting. He has been very supportive. So let me give you a little bit background about the person that we are talking about here. And some of you might think that I'm not a small person. So when you see me, you have to put respect in my name. So I don't associate with ordinary people. I associate with great people, right? So he is he studied, he's an attorney, we all know that, a very strong thought leader, right? An international speaker, a business consultant, and a long-time activist in the field of longevity and transhumanism. I bet you 80%, Paul must have advised 80% of the longevity organization from across the world. There is no longevity personnel in the world today that doesn't know him. So he studied European and Asian history and language at Berkeley University. So this is an Ivy League product. It's not just anyhow lawyer. He's an Ivy League product. So, and he can speak a whole lot of languages, and he has traveled over 109 countries and speaks fluently 5 languages, plus other he has learned and largely lost from lack of use. So he is a Wall Street lawyer, underscore that, and he's doing a lot. So I would allow him the time to give us a little bit of his background, which I think is a way of inspiring the younger generation and some of the experts in the rooms, the lawyers, the clinicians and all that. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ms. Paul, and then before we get into the lectures proper. Thank you so much for making out time to be here. Thank you also, Brianna, for making out time to be here. I'm super excited to have both of you. Thank you.
Oh, see, thank you so much for this introduction. I almost feel like I'm hearing about someone else. I sort of forget sometimes that I've done a few things in my life. One of the most rewarding things that I have done in my life, with apologies to my 21-year-old son, who is now a researcher at UCSF, one of the most rewarding things that I've done is to advise the longevity movement for almost 20 years now. And one of the more wonderful things that I have done is to advise Afrolongevity. Some people, I'd say, who is this 69-year-old white guy who's trying to help Africa to move into the future? Well, they don't know this usually, but I first visited Africa in 1971. I was 15 years old, and it made a huge impression on me. It wasn't just, half a week in the Nairobi Game Park or something like that. We spent a whole summer traveling through Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania as a student tour in VW minibuses, visiting small towns, cities, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, camping in the Ngorongoro crater. And although East Africa is a small part of Africa generally, it was it made a huge impression on me. One of the reasons that it did was that we were just into the post-colonial era. The 1960s was a huge time in Africa for people becoming independent, getting out from under the yoke of the British, the French, the Belgians, the Portuguese, and becoming Africa in its own right. And I remember specifically at the tender age of 15, visiting the Kenya Parliament and watching as a room full of Africans were debating the future of an African country, where it was going to go, how it was going to work, what laws were going to be made. And many of these people were singing the future into existence from their own dreams and their own knowledge. It was magic. And here we are now, 50 years later, something like that. And it's still magic. Africa has the most amazing, wonderful potential. And it is perhaps the last continent on Earth where this potential can be realized by the inhabitants of the continent, and it can be done with recognition of what's going on in the rest of the world, but without being dominated by it. And this is Africa's future. And I'm very happy to be able to advise TAFFDS, Afrolongevity, among the several other organizations and individuals and companies that I advise. OC has done a wonderful thing here. And I think that everybody who is listening to this video on YouTube or wherever owes him a debt of gratitude for having the courage, having the foresight to take this up and to move it on. I remember when he got discouraged, I asked him how old he was, and I passed on a bit of wisdom from my old mentors, Mr. Seymour Lazar, also a lawyer, sort of a crazy one, but well-known. He had his obituary in something like 12 newspapers when he died, including the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, The Economist, et cetera, et cetera. when I was about 26 or 27 years old, Seymour told me, he said, look, you can screw around until you're 30, but that's when you have to get serious. And that's why I asked Oshie how old he was, because he was getting discouraged and he wasn't 30 years old yet. And here he is now, and he did not stay discouraged, and he went on to do great things. And we are all doing these great things with him. Now, in this context, and again, Osi, thank you for what you have done, and thank you for what you will do. I've been asked to talk a little bit about longevity, law, and ethics in Africa. And this is why we're here. Now, I cannot, unfortunately, see how many participants that we have here, so you'll have to forgive me, but I expect there are quite a few of them. I've seen a lot of admit requests come through since we've been talking. This is going to be sort of a Socratic presentation. I'm not just going to sit here and lay down the law, as they say, or tell you what you need to know. But if we can have audience interaction, there will be questions. And in the true Socratic method, we will find the truth by asking these questions and determining the answers based on the consensus of the participants. So the first thing that I'd like to ask you is, what comes to mind when you think of longevity? Is it science? Is it ethics? Is it inequality? Is it the imposition of outside standards on an African movement? Is it opportunity? Does anybody have any suggestions they can throw out there? Assuming we can actually do this two ways. Anyone?
Yeah, just unmute yourself and take up the answer the question. Unmute yourself.
Who, me? No, I'm unmuted.
No,
Anyone
not you.
else? Yeah.
Adedoja, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think it is science.
Science, yes, very important. And does anybody else have an idea? Or I'll just start talking again. I'm giving you fair warning.
Can I have something to say?
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you for the question. I'm making it interactive. For me, I think it's an opportunity. It's more of an opportunity for Africa and for the whole world. That's what I have to say for now. Opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. I think science is certainly important, but that science represents an opportunity. And Africa needs opportunities. For a century or more, Africa was sort of pushed down by the weight of Europe to the north. But now this is the 21st century. This is Africa's century. You can come into your own. There are enormous opportunities. There are things happening that we could only dream of 20 years ago when I first entered this wonderful community. And they're happening everywhere. They're not just happening in the United States, in Silicon Valley. They're not just happening in Europe or in Singapore. There are things happening everywhere. And Africa has done this before. People must remember the first heart transplant at Groote Schuur Hospital in, I believe it was Cape Town, South Africa. Dr. Christian Barnard had the courage and the foresight to believe that he could transplant a human heart into a gentleman by the name of Louis Washkansky, who has survived quite a few weeks, which was remarkable in itself, because nobody really expected him to survive at all. And that paved the way for organ transplants, especially heart transplants, which today are unusual, but they're not astonishing anymore. Lots of people get heart transplants. Africa can do this. There is a huge opportunity here, but nobody's going to hand it to us on a platter. Africa has to stand up and make the best of these opportunities, create them if necessary. In that regard, could we have the next slide, please? Brianna? Yes, thank you. Longevity medicine is accelerating. It's a burgeoning field. It will probably be one of the most valuable fields of medicine in the next 100 years, but even in the next 10 or 20. And it's pretty obvious. I mean, look, who wants to die? Don't answer that. I don't think anybody is ready to do that. If so, you wouldn't be wasting your time listening to this presentation. You'd be out looking for a bridge to jump off of or a rail car to throw yourself in front of. Essentially, very few people want to die. And the ones that do, leaving aside serious depression, the ones that do are at the end of their life, their body is falling apart. It hurts to breathe, it hurts to move. And the only reason that doesn't hurt too much is because they're being given opioid painkillers, which numb their brains to the point where they basically hardly exist anymore. I know this happened to my father, who was a brilliant, articulate man, essentially disappeared when they started giving him opioids. He lived for quite a few months afterwards, but nobody recognized him. Nobody wants to die. We'll leave aside the question of living forever or how long you want to live, but there's a market. There's an opportunity. There are people out there just waiting for somebody to create a breakthrough that helps them to live a long, healthy, hopefully happy life. And frankly, they don't care if it comes out of Silicon Valley or if it comes out of Rwanda. As long as it's there, they will be happy. This is Africa's opportunity to make a mark for itself. If somebody in Africa can come up with a therapy or a technique or a device that will help people to live longer, happier lives, Africa will stand on the world stage and say, hey, we just did what we had to do. This is for the good of humanity. We'll get to the question of Ubuntu a little later, but that's basically what it's all about. So this raises a question. Therapies are now starting to move faster than laws. This isn't the first time that we've seen that. Let's look at nuclear energy for a second. All of a sudden, we had this massive rush towards creating first an atomic weapon and later nuclear power plants. And the world was moving so fast that the regulation couldn't catch up. And that didn't work out very well. The same thing with climate change. You know, we knew a long time ago what to do to keep the world from overheating, but we didn't do it because legislation and laws were slow to catch up. And so the question that we have is, you know, should laws accelerate to match the pace of science, or should science slow down to match current laws? I'd be curious to know if anybody has an answer on that, and please feel free to chime in. But Africa, a conglomeration of sovereign nations, has the opportunity to make its own rules. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just ignore what's going on in the rest of the world. Science is a global pursuit. But this is Africa's opportunity to join in, to become part of the structure, and to help to make things happen. Does anybody have any feelings on the question of whether we should try and catch up or get ahead of the scientific? Well, never mind. I'm going to answer this one. This is easy. We need to stay on top of it. We need to make sure that our regulations are reflecting reality. It can't be too fast. It can't be too slow, but it has to be right where it should be. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a situation with like nuclear power or whatever, and that's not a good thing. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, Africa, as you can see from this chart here, is unfortunately at the bottom of the list when it comes to life expectancy. There is a serious gap between Africa and North America, Africa and Europe, or really Africa and anywhere else. And some people may see that as a tragedy, but again, I see that as an opportunity. There are people who can benefit from what we're doing if we can only provide them with what they need. And there is nothing that says that tomorrow's genius scientist must be living in Oxford or at Harvard or Berkeley or whatever. They could very well be living in Lagos. They could be living in Kampala, or you name it, anywhere, as long as the work that they're doing is good and as long as it's helpful. That's wonderful. So there again is your golden opportunity for Africa. So let's look at what the world is doing right now. If we could have the next slide, please. Thank you, Brandon. We have several different models. The first, of course, is the United States, which everybody looks to because, of course, we're number one, right? Well, we don't have to be number one. Other people can take that role. We may lose it if we start eliminating scientific programs, as unfortunately we seem to be doing right now. Then, we have regenerative medicine, advanced therapies, which essentially are fast tracked by the United States Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. That is a move forward. It lets us move faster. The American pharmaceutical approval process takes a long time right now, and it costs lots and lots of money to get any new drug approved. So we're trying hard to change that. And in fact, although we don't hear much from him these days, one of the deputies at the Department of Health and Human Services in the United States is a gentleman by the name of Jim O'Neill, who is a longtime friend of the longevity movement. Jim was a founding director of the STENS Research Foundation, and he is now deep in the U.S. government. I can't wait to see what he can do to promote the cause of longevity from such a high post. Again, this goes to the fact that you could be surprised. I mean, we all knew that Jim had government experience, but it never occurred to me that he would be brought into this government in the way that he has been. So he's one of us, as they say. At the state level in the United States, different states have different rules regarding stem cell research. We have a high innovation rate and a moderate risk. Yes. Anybody? No? So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to hear you, but you're breaking up. Please feel free to speak up.
So I don't think someone wanted to say something. It's just that
Okay.
yeah.
Overspray. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So then we get to Europe. Now, there is a rule for advanced therapy and medicinal products out of Europe. It's more of a centralized approval approach. It's largely precautionary, what would happen if. But the centralized approval approach works well for Europe because it is a conglomeration of, 26 member states, the European Union. And that's something to look at because that's roughly half the number of nations on the African continent. If Europe can do it, Africa can do it too. There's no secret magic to Europe, although Europe spent nearly a century trying to persuade Africa that there was. It's not the case. If they can do it, we can do it too. So that means that there's high safety level, but a slow innovation level. Then we've got Japan. I love Japan. I used to work there. The people are extremely meticulous, extremely good at improving things. I will venture to say that there is less original research coming out of Japan than I would like to see, but the Japanese are really enormously capable at improving things, taking something and making it better. The refinement that comes out of Japan is probably second to nowhere in the world. They have conditional and time-limited approvals. It's kind of a wait-and-see approach. Let's give it a shot, see how things work. So it sort of combines innovation with evidence to see how that works. And globally, there's a fairly fast rate of regulatory approval for experiments, maybe the highest in the world. A couple of others come to mind. Brianna? Thank you. We've got China and the UK. China, for all that it has achieved, and perhaps because of this, China is an authoritarian state. The government basically controls everything. It's one of the reasons that in the last 25 years, China has gone from zero high-speed rail to perhaps the most sophisticated high-speed rail network in the world. They were not constrained by the sort of limitations that we see in the United States, where we still embarrassingly have essentially no high-speed rail and most certainly no high-speed rail network. If we had even 10% of what China has developed in the last 20 years or 25 years, we'd see enormous progress on that. So the heavy state oversight is a bit of a problem. If what you're doing is favorable to the state, if they want to promote you, if they want to help you do things, that's great. If not, well, China is an authoritarian state. But they have achieved enormous things. So, you got to admire that. You really do. Then there's the United Kingdom, which has the Human Tissue Act and strong ethics boards that make sure that research is overseen by people who hopefully will keep it in line. And so that's a question. In matters of the human body, in the matters of healthy human longevity, what balance should we strike between state control, corporate control, and individual autonomy? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Wide open. Please speak up if you feel like it.
Individual autonomy.
I beg your pardon?
Individual autonomy.
Uh-huh. Okay. And how would we promote individual autonomy without opening the gates to out of control science, the so-called mad scientist, Dr. Frankenstein problem?
The thing is that we should also look at it from even the individual autonomy. It's even really complex to avoid kind of personalism in science, as we are even faced with the problem of corporate backed science that is causing disruption and institutionalized science or regulation formed by the government, and the biases that come with that. So the individual approach will be suited in Africa because we live more on intergenerational knowledge that have been transferred over the years, centuries by our ancestors. So yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. That makes sense. Anybody else have a thought on this one? This is a big one. Okay, I feel like an auctioneer. In 10 seconds. Okay, so we will go with that.
Okay.
Next slide.
Can I
Yes.
speak?
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
Individual
This is a
autonomy.
seminar. It's not a lecture. It's a seminar. Okay.
Even though I agree with individual autonomy, but it has to be under check and balances from what we call like what happened in China, not overbearing, not being like totalitarian, but it should be checked. What I'm saying is there should be state actors to oversee what is actually going on with the individual, maybe science or whatever it is. So it should be checked, because if you don't check it, things can go out of control. So even though I agree with individual autonomy, that it should be checked as well. There should be something like, in quote, an editorial board to check what every individual is doing to make sure it falls in line with science that will be for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very important.
So what if we make sorry for interjecting, Paul.
Of course.
What if we make the individual autonomy sort of system more or less egalitarian, where we pick from the people and not an influenced a kind of influenced institution, like I was talking about the government, that check and balancing. Even if I agree with that, it should be egalitarian, where the consensus of the people, the individual that we are also talking about, decide the fate of or the trajectory of things. Because using egalitarian will even help in decentralizing the decision making.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's important, I believe, that things be egalitarian. We've had a situation, not just in Africa, but in the rest of the world, where the elites, where the wealthy get their technology first, and sometimes the rest of the world kind of gets left behind to pick up the crumbs. Now, crumbs can sometimes grow into loaves and fishes, if you'll excuse the biblical analogy. Somebody's got to be at the forefront. And if the forefront is expensive, then the people at the forefront will be the people with wealth. But egalitarianism is essential. You cannot, for very long, have the wealthy benefit from a system of research, of discovery, and of rules that do not benefit everybody. That nobody will stand for that. Now, there are a number of billionaires right now in the longevity field who are doing remarkable things. But if that does not translate to the rest of the world in a relatively short period of time, then what good is it? You know, a couple more billionaires live another 50 years. Okay, that's nice. We're in this for the good of the world here, and specifically also for the good of Africa, which really needs that. So let's go a little bit to the African legal landscape. There are a couple of examples right now of people essentially legislating, governing, and considering where things will go. There's SAPRA, the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. There's also the Rwanda National Ethics Committee, RNEC. It's not as easy to pronounce that acronym as SAPRA, but that's great. There are, forgive me if I have the number wrong, 55 nations in Africa, and well over 50 at least. And we've got two, South Africa and Rwanda, that are carefully looking at this. Now, South Africa is an interesting one because in some ways it's perhaps the most heavily influenced by Europe. Rwanda is another matter altogether. Rwanda is looking at longevity science and other sciences, and they're trying to create a Silicon Valley in Central Africa. Something to think about. It's promising, very promising. But these are really only two examples that we've been able to find. I also had lunch with a Harvard researcher, wonderfully named Immaculata De Vivo, Italian ancestry, but a professor at Harvard. And she has been working on a longitudinal study for something like 30 years of longevity in Africa. It's one of the few examples that I can find of a foreign researcher trying to make a determination on Afrolongevity. And in fact, OC, if I could make a suggestion, we should really contact Professor De Vivo, great name, and see if she'd like to attend an Afrolongevity conference at some point. We've had some remarkable speakers from abroad in the past, and I think that Immaculata De Vivo at Harvard would be a wonderful one for our next conference. The problem that we have here, despite the strong examples that we've discussed, is that there are fragmented laws. There are weak rules governing biobanking, genomic data regulation. And really, this is important, limited intellectual property and benefit sharing protections, as well as few laws right now specific to regenerative medicine, to longevity medicine, to advanced therapies. So there are gaps to be filled. There's a question if anybody would care to answer it. By the way, if nobody wants to answer these questions, that's fine. There's no obligation. I'm happy to sit here and blather for as long as OC will give me. But does anybody, what are the most important gaps that people see right now? Is it a data problem? Is it a problem with IP and clinical trials? What's the most important thing we need to address first? And again, we're not carving things in
Okay.
stone here. Give us some ideas, please.
In Nigeria, to start with, we have NAFDAC. We have a problem with clinical trial and poor bioequivalence. We have problem with aside that, we also have a problem with pharmacovigilance, in Nigeria, and most people, and this is because of the presence of open drug markets in Nigeria and most West Africa. So the retailing, the supply chain of medication in Nigeria is not tailored, and most West African countries is not tailored from pharmaceuticals to their own design or government designed supply chains. But open drug markets, where if you have money, you can go to China, you can go to India and ask them to produce, even if it's substandard drugs for you. And then in as much as you have your clinical trial document, and then you lobby the regulatory authorities, then you put it in your shop. And that becomes a problem, which is really the big major issue. That's for bacterial and infectious disease, and other ones now that comes into play. The second one could be data issues. So, which is why I said the regulation that comes with clinical trial pharmacovigilance is the #1 problem before we start talking about other fragmentations, from my own view. Thank you.
Of course. Anybody else? Okay. I just realized, looking at the slides that we're on right now, we have a lot to cover and only a little over 20 minutes to do so. So let's move ahead a little bit more quickly. Thank you. We have ethical advantages in Africa that not everybody has. One of them is the concept of Ubuntu. People working toward the collective good. It's a lovely concept that most people, unfortunately, really don't follow in the world. Everybody's out for themselves. Africa has a collective understanding. It's us, not them and us. And that's something that should be celebrated. Africa also has a strong suspicion of exploitation. And yes, I mean, God knows Africa's been exploited, but that's in the past now. We can dwell on that. We can complain about it. We can say how horrible it was. Colonialism was not good to Africa. Things went on under the Belgians in the Congo that are horrific. But that's not happening anymore. Africa also has a young population. It's driving innovation. It has to. Not everybody can live in a village. Not everybody can, grow crops for a living. There are smart people. There are brilliant people. There are driven people in Africa who are looking for an outlet. They're looking for a place to exercise themselves and to promote the concept of Ubuntu in an African context. Africa also has the richest genetic diversity on Earth. And something can be made of that in research. I'm sure of that. Now let's go to, there are 3 cases that we have here. And because we have exactly 20 minutes and a fair amount of stuff to discuss, let's just run through these quickly rather than discussing them. Think about them and see what you would do with this. One is the dilemma of genomic data. Imagine a foreign biotech proposes collecting African genomic data for anti-aging drug development. That's very important. It's part of what Professor De Vivo is doing. What she is not doing is exploiting Africa in this regard. The foreign biotech in our... Sorry, could you mute yourself, please? Okay. the hypothetical foreign biotech here proposes collection of African genomic data for anti-aging drug development. I was involved with a company like this that was trying to do this in Europe. It's not unusual. They offer free sequencing. They offer training, but they store their data on foreign servers. And the question is then, do they control analysis? Do they commercialize their findings? Do they have to give back anything? Big question there. If Africa is going to create its own rules, it has to create fairness, has to create equity. You cannot just give the family jewels to some foreign drug development company. Say, okay, here, we know you'll take care of us someday, if only we just give you everything with no controls. Another one, which is big these days, huge, is AI diagnostics. I happened to have the privilege last week of attending a lecture at OpenAI in San Francisco by their CEO, Sam Altman, who is very much aware of the need to responsibly use data. I have to say that Mr. Altman was a very persuasive speaker, and clearly he has devoted a lot of thought to the consequences of misuse, whether intentional or inadvertent, of such a strong and increasingly powerful tool. So imagine that we have an AI-driven longevity diagnostic tool. It's very, very capable of doing what it's been trained to do, which is to analyze European data sets, but it misdiagnoses African patients. That's, kind of a problem. What happens when AI bias becomes a medical issue for longevity? Misclassification, misdiagnosis can shorten life and deepen inequality. So, should Africa mandate that AI health analysis should be trained on African models? I would say so. It doesn't necessarily single out Africa per se. The Indonesian archipelago would probably give different data if it were analyzed than would, say, a bunch of Europeans. But we need to consider this as well. Next slide. Moving from cases to principles. And I'm sorry, I'm starting to rush this a little bit, but we have a bit to cover. This is important, though. The principles that we need to pursue. Data sovereignty is important. We cannot just allow foreign companies to come in and do for our all-important data what they once did for Africa's all-important resources. You can't just go in and mine this data and then take it away and use it for your own purposes and leave crumbs to Africa. This can be regulated. Nobody's going to just abandon Africa and say, oh, no, they want control over their own data. We can't possibly do business with them. It doesn't work that way. We need equitable benefit sharing. I cannot emphasize that enough. Without dwelling too much on the past, equitable benefit sharing has been sorely lacking in Africa in the last century. But we're 25 years into the new century now, and we can start working towards the future. It has to be done. A clinical trial harmonization. We have to be able to do things in a way that the world can see and acknowledge and say, yeah, African data is as good as any other data. Their researchers are smart, their protocols are strong, and their results are valid. That has to be shown. Biopiracy, it's gone on for a long time. I don't know if anybody remembers that rubber, around the turn of the 20th century, the end of the 19th century, the turn of the 20th century, rubber came from one place. It came from the Amazon, mostly Brazil, Peru. And then somebody went out and essentially stole rubber trees. An Englishman, I believe, stole rubber trees from Peru and created a whole new industry. Malaysia, for example, all over the tropics. Interestingly, English colonies in the tropics started producing rubber, and Peru and Brazil suffered from that. They no longer had a monopoly on their own resources. This was the first acknowledged example of biopiracy. Africa has to make sure that our results are not stolen from us. AI fairness, yeah. AI knows what it knows. It knows what it's taught. And if you teach AI something that doesn't apply to your country, to your people, to your genome, or whatever, what good is it? It's using the wrong data to analyze what's going on with you. So we need to make sure that there is some kind of fairness here, some kind of equity. And then, of course, community inclusion. This is Ubuntu again. Let's do it for everybody, not just for some guy with his 17th private jet. I'm not singling out anybody in particular, but the concept that somebody is so wealthy that he can deprive Africa of benefits that it deserves is hard for me to accept. Nobody is so wealthy that they can ignore their neighbors. And we are all neighbors. That's kind of what Ubuntu seems to be about. So let's go to, I guess, the clarion call of this discussion, which is that Africa has to create its own longevity governance body. We've talked about this before. I talked about it in Johannesburg a couple of years ago, and there's been a lot of interest in it, but we need to build a cohort. We need to build an army, create what I've suggested we call a Pan-African Longevity Authority, PALA. And what this needs to do is, create harmonization. Thank you, Ossie. We need to be essentially create something along the lines of the European Union, at least as regards to longevity, possibly as regards to everything else. But longevity is a discrete subset of everything else that we can work with, that we can govern. Nobody's going to worry about their own sovereignty being taken over because we're trying to harmonize longevity research. Other people can work on agriculture. Other people can work on, the rights of man or whatever. We work on what we know, and what we know is longevity. We have role models, we have examples, we have connections, we have contacts, and we need to be able to make sure that Africa does it in a way that everybody recognizes. That means harmonizing the laws over all 54 countries. I thought it was 55. We need to signal that Africa is ready, and a Pan-African Longevity Authority is something that would do that. Give us an organization that people can look to for answers, that people can donate to, that people can work with. An organization that protects our data, protects our IP, and ensures patient welfare. Because without that, what good is it? We become a continent full of lab rats? I'm sorry, that doesn't work. PALA, Pan-African Longevity Authority, could encourage responsible biotech investment, perhaps create a listing of PALA-approved organizations. There are some people, unfortunately, in the longevity community that are producing and creating questionable therapies, questionable lines of pursuit. The trouble is, and I'll be very honest, we don't always know which ones those are. It's like somebody once said, I think that 85% of my advertising budget is totally wasted. I just can't figure out which 15%, which 85% that is. I'd eliminate it if I could identify it, but you got what you got. So we have to be able to identify the ones that look good without getting rid of the ones that look bad. Because yesterday's crazy idea could be tomorrow's stroke of genius. That's what's happened with longevity generally. When I first became involved with this, people thought I was insane. What are you doing wasting your time on this? You're 50 years old. You don't have a lot of time left. Why are you spending your time on longevity? Well, it's becoming one of the most important scientific, moral, ethical, and legal pursuits in the world today. And I'm very glad to have had a part of it. So we need to be able to prevent unethical experimentation. That's hard, especially in a country like Africa. You get somebody out in the bush somewhere, off the grid or nearly off the grid, and there's an amazing amount of stuff they can do. The same motivation that encourages people to slaughter elephants for their tusks, could encourage people to build backwoods laboratories that did things we wouldn't necessarily like. And that creates the same sort of problems. You need effectively scientific game wardens to make sure that that experimentation is not being done in the middle of the jungle in the Congo somewhere. I'm not quite sure what we do with that. We have to ask ourselves that question. And then we need to align ourselves with the African Union's Agenda 2063. But this is why we need our own governance body. We can make this ourselves. We can sing it into existence like the wizards in the stories. We can make it happen out of nothing. The question is, what would this body look like? Well, again, we go back to the term PALA, the Pan-African Longevity Authority. And, well, we've modeled it loosely on the EU's medical authority and on the African Union's Africa CDC. We could create divisions for clinical trials, for biobanking, for data, for ATMP, regenerative medicine regulation, not just regenerative, but longevity medicine generally. AI and health oversight, ethics and community, and IP and benefit sharing. These are all things that we can create just by stepping up and starting to create them. Forgive me for being mystical, but we have to stand and sing our song, because if we don't sing, nobody will listen. But we can do this. We have the opportunity. The Afrolongevity movement, the TAFFDS, would be an excellent place to start with this. And Osi and I have talked about this for several years now. If nobody else is going to do it, that's great. That's our opportunity. This is where we can start. So let's take a look at what regulation might do. If we could have a look at this for a second, regulation can create a tool for equality. Without regulation, you get the exploitation. People do whatever the heck they think is right. They persuade people by whatever means are necessary, whether it's economic or by force of arms or by basic charlatanism. The lack of regulation allows people to be exploited. Bad regulation slows things down. We run across a situation where, well, bad regulation screws things up. But if we have ethical regulation, that promotes growth, it promotes trust, it promotes benefits for everybody. And again, PALA, an African Longevity Association, administration, alliance, whatever you call it, can create great results. Now, let's look again at what other countries can teach us. We want to create a chimera, if you will, a conglomeration of the best aspects of what other countries have been doing. And just as we're trying to unify and organize 54 African nations, we can look to, half a dozen or so foreign examples to see what that does for us. We can get speed from the United States and structure from the European Union. We can get hybrid models, refined hybrids from Japan, and strong boundaries from China. Plus procedural rigor from actually all of these countries, but the English are very good at this. That would be something to do. Now, this is not to say that we should copy what other countries do. What we need to do is learn from, study them. I can see that my third hemisphere of my brain is telling me to hurry up because we got things to do. So let's go to the guiding philosophy. The African rules for African future involve science uplifting its populations, not just making money for somebody, particularly a non-African organization, but lifting up the population that it's studying, sharing the benefits of the research. And this is non-negotiable. We went through a century or more where Africans saw very little benefit from what they were creating for others. We deserve as much in that regard as anybody else in the world. I don't think it's necessary to say that we deserve more because we were screwed for so long, but we need at least as much as the next guy. That's only fair. It's only equitable. And I don't know who can really argue with that. We need to build local capacity. That has to be mandatory. We can't just ship data off somewhere else. We need a scientific community in Africa that is working in Africa on projects that benefit Africa and the rest of the world. We can do that. We need a guiding organization like PALA to do that. Community consent is important. It's as important as individual consent. But we need to create that consensus. Again, go back to PALA. And we have to share in the world's progress. No longevity for outsiders, unless there's longevity for Africans too. Africa deserves its seat at the table. We have earned it. We have waited for it patiently, and now we are creating it. So that's what we do. So one final question. Should the law aim to extend life or just to protect it? Can we create laws, rules, regulations, protocols that move us forward, or will those laws, regulation, rules, and protocols act like a wall around the garden to keep things from getting out? And this is a final question. It is one that is worthy of legal minds. It's something that we need to discuss. So we have a call to action here. And again, I keep sticking PALA in here, but I really believe that this is what is necessary. Africa needs to stop being the subject of this discussion and start being an author of this discussion. Certainly not the only one. But we have to become part of the process. We need to build ethical frameworks before crises hit. We cannot just wait for something we know is going to happen. Say, oh, well, we'll get to that when it happens. Disaster. We have droughts, for example. We know that droughts are going to occur, but what do we do about it? No, not a whole lot. We wait until it happens and then wave our hands around and say, oh my God, how could this happen to us? We need foresight. We need frameworks to make sure that we are ready for foreseeable problems. We need to establish PALA. I don't know how many times I've said that. I would strongly put my reputation behind the need for this, whatever that reputation might be. Africa needs a Pan-African Longevity Alliance, and right now they don't have one. And certainly that can work with every other organization in the world. I have founded longevity organizations before. I'm the chairman of the board of one of them. We need this for Africa, and it can happen. We need to signal to the world that Africa welcomes longevity science, that we welcome it from a scientific standpoint, that we welcome it in an ethical fashion, and that we are open for business in this regard. And in this regard, since we're like 1 minute away from time, I invite each one of you, every one of you, to lend your voice, your legal insight, your ethical understanding to this effort. Africa must signal to the world that we welcome longevity science, but on Africa's terms and not on someone else's. This is what we are looking for. And there are some many cases that I don't think we really have time to go through right now. We are just at time. I will post this up along with a worksheet. We'll get that together, and hopefully OC will post it on the website. You can look for that maybe as soon as tomorrow. And then there's, our special thanks. My name is Paul Spiegel. I have a law firm in California, Eclectic Law. We think of ourselves as the longevity lawyers. We've been at this now for nearly 20 years. There's Libertas Biomedical, which is a company that I've created that frankly is not doing very much right now, but which is there and open for business when we can find the business to work with. I mentioned that I was the chairman of the board of an organization, the Lifespan Research Institute. We are doing great things. As some of you may know, we are a merged entity that comprises SENS Research Foundation and the Lifespan Extension Research Foundation. We're doing great things, and we're looking for your support. Anybody else you can help with? I am also a board member of Humanity Plus, which is the world's foremost transhumanist organization. I founded the American Longevity Alliance, a member of the International Longevity Alliance, and I am a proud and a very proud advisor to Afrolongevity proper. I also want to thank somebody of immense importance to all of this. That's my associate attorney, Brianna Azevedo, whom I describe periodically as the third hemisphere of my brain. I couldn't do this without her. And you should take note of Brianna. She is a force and will be a force in longevity and whatever endeavor she sets her mind to. She's just amazing. So look her up and take note, please. And I want to thank again Osinakachi Akumakalo and the Afro-Longevity Movement, the TAFFDS, and all the people who are working to bring Africa into the new century as a force for longevity for this most important continent. Thank you again. I'm sorry for running over a couple of minutes, but I hope this has been worth your time.
This is super amazing, right? There is one thing that recharges me after my short meeting with Paul, or after his excellent presentation. He's just like a born teacher. He gave this presentation, and we wanted to do a book and do a pitch around it in 2023. It was really amazing. Everybody was like, even the minister said to me, "OC, you guys are doing amazing thing," and it challenges the status quo. This is what is happening in Africa. There is no regulation, and there are a whole lot. People see Africa as a dumping ground where they come do businesses, they exploit Africa, and it's even worse now than during the colonial era, right? So the pre-colonial era. So, but with ideas like this, it encourages me. Most of the people in the longevity space said, you need to be a rebel to change your continent, right? But I need to also have the right information and the right team to really make this happen. This is a wonderful presentation. We're going to do a lot about this. We're going to present it to several parliaments. We're going to present it to several institutions. But the second option is to build in parallel, and those who is inspired by this, they'll fall into place and then work with us going forward. We already started this movement, and for me, it's a lot, and I'm excited that I have the backing of great people from across the Okay, this part of the backing that we are talking about. Okay, great people from across the world, and I'm excited that this is happening in my lifetime, and it's going to be intergenerational. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much, Brianna, for being very supportive. We're going to invite you to Afrolongevity to see how you're going to be part of what we are doing. We're going to open the floor for a few questions, and I'll ask my own question before we introduce the next teacher. Thank you. Question, please.
I'm sorry, having a hard time hearing that.
Okay, question. If you have questions, please raise your hand. If you don't have, I'll ask mine. Okay, Ade Dodger, ask your question, please.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for the wonderful presentation. It is quite an insightful section because it actually opens my eyes. I don't really have a question, but I just want to thank you because I just want to contribute to the conversation, because as you are presenting your presentation, I was inspired. Like, it opens my eyes. Like, it's been a long time that this biopricing have been happening, like coming to the Africa, take our species, our plants, do research, then they will buy it heavily. We continue sell it to them, and we'll be like, what are they using it for? And at the end of the day, they will sell it to us back in a large amount. Either it is good for us or not. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I must really say it inspired me a lot, and I hope I will be able to contribute to this movement as it's going on.
Thank you so much, Adedoja. Bean, your question.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Thank you, Dr. Osei and Dr. Paul. Now, my question is, with the coming of Afrolongevity and the PALA, will it not affect trade in one way or another, since most African countries rely heavily on, I can say, 60% of imported goods, like pharmaceuticals, cosmetic, it goes beyond that. So with the coming of Afrolongevity, will it not affect the trade between Africa and the Western world? That's my question.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay. He's asking that if we start this this parliament and all that, this strategy, will it not affect the trade relationship that Africa got with other European and Asian countries, since we rely heavily on imported products and relationship with European, Asian country when it comes to things like medicine and cosmetics?
Well, the reliance on foreign sources is nothing unusual. Everybody relies on foreign sources, even the United States. I ran across a situation some years ago where I was taking a certain cancer medication, and my doctor called me up and said, "We're terribly sorry. There's been a supply chain problem in Japan. We haven't got your medication. Here are some alternatives that we can give you." And fortunately, I survived that little supply chain problem. It was quite a few years ago now. But this is just something we all face. Africa does rely on foreign resources. I think if you look closely, you'll find that we all do. The world is interconnected. It is globalized now. Everything has a piece of someplace else in it. I won't get all political on you about why tariffs don't work well, but it's almost impossible to find a single source material, a single source product, a single source scientific endeavor. I mean, even if all you do is inject your therapy using a hypodermic needle, the chances are that hypodermic needles come from somewhere else. So I don't know what you do about that. You just accept that this is the way the world works and move forward with it. It's a challenge that everybody faces. I've faced it myself.
If I could add in, I think that also,
Please.
as Paul and I are corporate attorneys, we deal with business. We don't do arguing, we do negotiation. So if anything, in my mind, if African countries are contributing to the longevity field, that kind of gives them more leverage, if anything.
I think that's definitely the case. Somebody's got their hand up.
Bean, do you still have follow-up question? If you have, then go ahead. After that, Duru, Onyinyechuku, you ask your question.
Okay. Madame, je vous attends.
Okay, I have another worry. So with the forming of the PALA and all the like, see, we are not really at the, we are not really at the top position to really, I can say, do things ourselves like in developed countries, because most of our books, most of the things we use, it really comes from the Western world. So I really think for me, it will not going to be an easy job. And But if we really put our backs into it, I think we can really achieve it. So my question now goes thus: how can you encourage Africans? What are the best opportunities, or what can we really do at the present moment to really make this this evolution, this innovative idea to be a successful one? Thank you.
Well, forgive me for sounding self-serving, but the first thing you should do is join TAFFDS and set your sights on an Afrolongevity movement. This job is too big for any one of us to do alone. It's too big for any single country in Africa to do alone. It has to be done on a group basis. Note, although I spent an hour talking about all kinds of things, I never said this would be easy. I said it would be necessary. And often the things that are the most necessary are the ones that take the most work. So what we're looking for here, why there is this wonderful movement that OC has created essentially out of nothing. We are here to pull together. One person pulling on a rope doesn't get very far. 100 people pulling on the same rope can move heavy weights. Maybe that's a poor analogy, but we can do this if we work together, if we have shared goals, common goals, even if not identical goals, as long as we understand that what we're trying to do is to create a situation of healthy longevity for the people of Africa, to create a new and promising and ultimately lucrative industry in Africa. And as long as we understand that we're doing this all in a strong, ethical fashion so that everybody benefits, I think we can do this. We just have to pull together. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that really helps, because I think when I started Afrolongevity, a whole lot of people were like, that this is not going to work. When I started TFFD, they were like, this should be a discussion in Europe and America. And I said, no. Now, when I started Afrolongevity, a lot of persons were like, you shouldn't have, let's talk about infectious disease and all that. I said, no, you don't understand where the world is going. We need to start now and not always being sitting back and allow problems come to us before we start equipping ourselves. We need to prevent problems and not always providing intervention. So, like, I know what I am in for, and I believe that anyone that is here will play a very vital role in making this a reality. We are already doing it. We start by having this conversation and having the knowledge for that. So, Duru, please ask your question. After that, I will read out some of the questions in the chat box.
Thank you so much, Dr. Osi, and thank you, Dr. Paul. I truly, truly appreciate this. Okay, I want to ask, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask, are fragmented laws the biggest obstacle to longevity progress, or is it political will?
There are fragmented laws all over the world. The world doesn't agree on all of this. That's why I threw all these different countries up there as examples. But really, nobody else speaks for a continent. Maybe the EU comes close, although I've always wondered why Europe is a separate continent when it's connected to Asia by land. It doesn't strike me as a continent, honestly. But that's okay. I like Europe. With regard to Africa, this is a golden opportunity to create reasonably uniform standards across a large portion of the world with a large population and an important economic future. But fragmented laws, yes, they are a problem. This is Africa's opportunity to do something about that problem.
Okay, thank you so much. Duru, can you please read the questions on the chat box?
Okay, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, someone is asking, what's the biggest possible way to achieve these propositions apart from good leadership? One that is positioned for transformation and innovations.
I'm not really sure what the best way is. I think you just have to do it. There are times when you have to go on faith that you will come up with an answer. Brianna, if you have any thoughts on this, please add them. But myself, I have always found that the best way to do something is to just start doing it. That's what Afrolongevity is. There was really nothing once except for a young man with a dream. And now here we are. We're talking to the world. So just do it.
And I think that also something that a lot of people leave out with good leadership is like a good, just group of people, which seems to be the case. A lot of people are drawn to longevity, not just for a longer life, but for a better life, for a longer period of time. We don't want to just extend life and just be, in hospice for longer or, sick, but, barely surviving. We want people to live. We want people to live well. And I think that having a group of people that have the same, ethical goals, and Paul said doesn't need to be exactly the same type of goals, but if they align in some way. There's so many different little parts of longevity. Longevity is not just like one big group. There's multiple little groups inside. There's cryonics, there's stem cell research, there's all of these things. I think that finding just good-hearted people in all of these areas, especially in Africa, is the way to go. And yes, good leadership, comes along with that, because when you get a good group of people together, they will, find a good leader, or a good leader will find them, vice versa.
Powerful. Powerful. So, can you read, Duru, can you read the last question? I think there is another question there.
Okay, sir. Yes, from Miss Peace. She's asking, I believe our government and some bodies partners with these people that comes here to take our data. How can we face this knowing fully well that our government is involved fully into it? That's
I think that this goes into Paul's, talk about a give and take. And I think this goes back to business. At the end of the day, the longevity organizations are still businesses. Governments, have to operate in a business-like manner of, Africa has the greatest biodiversity and genomic diversity in the entire world. And they need to leverage that. They need to use that to their advantage. If people do want, the data, we need to make sure that we're putting people in power who are, willing to share that data, because it is going to help the entire world. It's going to help the entire longevity movement. But we need to make sure that Africa's being given the right, payment or support in return. We can't just be giving out or letting people just take and take and take. And that seems to have been, the issue with how people treat Africa. We need to put people in charge who are willing to put their foot down and say, no, we have these resources. You need these resources. What are you going to give us in return? And it doesn't have to be in a malicious way, but it has to be a give and take. And you need to put people in charge that are willing to fight for that give and take.
Well, unfortunately, if I may, there are things that you can actually transact with. When I started Afrolongevity, there are some decisions that I made because I believe that one of the things that easily happen when you start initiative or a movement like this, it's easily hijacked. So I'm not ready to fight a system, a traditional system, if not, they have what it takes to really put you in your place, right? Government is next to God. So unless you don't understand what government is. So, but my idea is just to do my thing and build a system that makes the existing system obsolete instead of fighting the existing system. I wouldn't want to exhaust my own my energy and time fighting already existing system. I need to put and invest that energy and resources in building our own system and showing people that there is something here. There is a way we can do it better. And we focus on doing that. So by doing so, there might be people that will like what you are doing and they will join you. Those people that joins you in doing that is enough. You don't need everybody to achieve your goal. You just need a committed people in ensuring that you get it right. So that's what I
Absolutely.
think. So,
And why should government get in the way of this? It's like, we're not doing anything objectionable. We're not suggesting that somebody give up his Mercedes-Benz for this cause. It's hard for the government to say, you guys are crazy, just go away. We're self-financed. We don't necessarily need anything from you. Just don't cause any problems. We'll go out and make sure you live a lot longer. And people say, yeah, I mean, people like to hear that they're going to get something for nothing. Well, if the government wants to contribute, if the government wants to participate, well, yeah, let's go. Why not?
Yeah, that's just like in South Africa, you see they are trying to build, for instance, when the CSIRO and some other institution invited us, they told us the what do we call them again? The BRICS mandates, because South Africa is in BRICS and they are looking at changing their aging policy, the population policy with focus on the aging policy, to say that we need a policy that will change the existing policy. And I was fortunate enough to be in that policy committee. I told them, let's formulate it the other way. Instead of investing or providing budget, taking care of the aging population, why not invest more in slowing down aging? And since the BRICS countries are trying to come up with policy that will help in shaping their aging population, and the BRICS country, they got the highest number of aging population from across the world. So it becomes a thing. So they got a mandate to do something, and the Minister of Social Development and also the Minister of Tourism, they are really pushing for that, and the Minister of Health. And we don't have such in West Africa. So what we have to do is to keep on talking, keep on coming up with ideas. They will see us, because it's not always the best idea that wins, but the most visible idea. No matter how smart you are or intelligent you are not useful until people understand that you are useful and intelligent. So the visibility of what we do is also important. We need to keep pushing. We need to keep demonstrating that what we are offering is relevant to the society. And we can only do that by demonstrating that it is relevant. And some of all these things, that Paul is putting up together is something that we need to work on, come up with it, because I always say this in our conference, that our conference shouldn't be a talk show where people come and exhibit that they are intelligent. The most important aspect of what we are doing is the conference proceeding, ability to translate all that we've said into our everyday reality, ability to make it livable, ability to apply them in our day-to-day life. That is just the real thing for me. That is the interesting aspect of what we are doing in Afrolongevity. And that's why we're struggling. We don't have all the funding that people get in Europe and America, but that shouldn't discourage us from doing the right thing. Okay, so I think I have we always have we have two questions to ask anybody that's come up here, and it's very important for us. You did mention something very important. One is that because based on your argument for a Pan-African Longevity Authority, I'm asking what should be the first 5 fundamental legal instruments Africa must draft to prevent exploitation, protect patients' welfare, and establish sovereignty in the longevity research from day one. You might not be able to answer it now, but I can send it back so that when you are drafting the documents, we can make use of it. Then my main question is, I need to sincerely thank you for mapping the ethical terrain for African biotech. So, but what specific legal reform must Africa prioritize to attract high quality longevity startups while avoiding the course of unregulated open drug market and substandard therapies in the continent?
I think this is something that needs more thought than we can really give it right here. I would almost suggest that we set up a meeting and give it, the attention that it deserves. I think obviously that standardization is important, that rules are important. We have to remember also that we are not a government organization, that the best we can do in terms of creating rules is to create our own and then hand them to the government and say, what do you think? Does this look right? Again, forgive me if there are any government officials listening right now, but government officials tend to be a little bit lazy. And when somebody does the work for them and puts it on their desk, they like that, assuming there's nothing in there that's totally objectionable. But it's easy enough to avoid things that are totally objectionable. If you go to local parliamentarian and say, we're proposing a set of research standards for Africa, which will ensure that Africans are properly taken care of, properly treated, and that benefits from this research are shared with the people who are bringing it in from the outside and performing it in Africa. And it won't cost you anything, by the way, except to acknowledge these rules are good. Okay, we'll have to go through committees, we'll have to go through whatever, but where's the downside? If you told them that it would cost 20 million naira or 200 million naira or whatever, they might think differently about it. But if the standards were just abstract standards that didn't require large amounts of money to implement, it seems to me that there is room for reasonable standards, for reasonable protocols to be implemented. Even if they don't have to be perfect, they can be a work in progress, as is so much in this world,
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Paul. Thank you so much, Brianna. I really appreciate your time and your selfless support. We appreciate it from here. I would like to sincerely thank you once again as we welcome our next speaker. Blessings. Okay.
Thank you. It's been a true pleasure to be able to address you all, and I hope we can move somewhere with this. I really do. Thank you, Osi.
Definitely. We must package it in such a way that it makes sense. I'm ready to, the next step is just to come up with a team that we make this translatable. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Do you have 1 or 2 words for us, Brianna?
I think that I do. I think that, as somebody who studied philosophy in undergrad in university, I think that people who are not directly in the science field tend to get discouraged, but the longevity community just genuinely needs good people who, are willing to go over the ethical part of what scientists are very good at achieving goals. And I think that scientists need to work in the longevity community with, more of the community thinkers, is how I'll put it.
Yeah, street knowledge is very important in all these things. We call it street knowledge here. And students also have a philosophy background. And yeah, it makes sense. We have to apply it. That's why it's the longevity movement from the top to the bottom is a rag bag of many people with many things. We have activists and all that. We just have to, and we need more politicians also in the longevity space to make sure that we accelerate the policy formulation and all that. Thank you so much, Brianna. And permit me to welcome our next teacher, Barrister Ebenezer Egwuatu. He's a Nigerian lawyer, and he's someone that's been talking about medical law, and he organized a program on medical law in Nigeria, and it's a monthly program, and I invited him to be part of what we're doing, and he is our next speaker. Thank you. Please, Barrister Ebenezer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, my brother Osinachi. Thank you very much. I am most delighted to be identified with the good work you're doing here. So I have signed up. Can you hear me? Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I just have to mute this person that is saying Ije.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So,
you are muted. You are muted. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good evening once again. I said I am pleased to identify with what you're doing. Firstly, I want to thank you for the privilege of inviting me to be here to speak to our people. By our people, I mean every participant. I have gone through, I've followed you for a while on Facebook. In fact, the first time I saw your post, I'm like, who is this one again? So I took my time, followed, read up before I reached out, before we connected. So thank you very much. Mr. Paul, thank you. You have saved me a lot of stress. You touched a few points I had, even though in a different or from a different perspective, but you touched a few points. And in doing that, you saved me some problems because I am not at my base at the moment. I traveled and I went with a wrong flash containing my slides. So when I was listening to you and you were touching on a lot of things that are related to what I said, okay, fine and good. I will see how I'll navigate around that. So straight into our presentation. Before I do, my name is Ebenezer Egwuatu. I am a lawyer, not just a lawyer, I am a medical lawyer. And the medical law is one of the evolving areas of legal practice in Nigeria. It is not that rampant like you have constitutional law, human rights law, or commercial law, or every other aspect of law. It is pretty an evolving area of legal practice. Fortunately for me, I did the course medical law as an undergraduate student. And shortly before I went to law school, I will call it a divine orchestration now. I found myself in a hospital ward nursing my uncle who suffered cancer of the colon. God of mercy. Sorry. Okay. Nursing my uncle who had a cancer of the colon. So that gave me opportunity to stay in the hospital environment as a patient relative for 3 months. So that exposure to that experience informed what I am doing today as a patient's rights and safety advocate. Now, because of my interest in medical law, I started out, after my call to bar, I started out with patient's rights advocacy because I saw a lot of patient's rights violation firsthand. I saw lack of effective or efficient communication between the healthcare professionals and patients. I saw medical negligence. In fact, I saved my uncle from untimely death as a result of medical mishap. One of the days I was by his bedside and a healthcare professional came to administer injection on him. And when I looked at the syringe, there were air bubbles. So I kept quiet. When he was about to administer the injection, I interrupted him. I said, "Excuse me, sir. Please, what do you understand? What do you know about embolism and embolysis?" Now, that is not a question every common man on the streets would ask a medical personnel. So when I asked that question, the young doctor paused for a while, now dispelled the air and administered the injection. So for more than 10 years, I have been in active patients' rights advocacy. On radio, on television, seminar, talk to doctors, trained nurses, trained doctors on avoidance of medical negligence, promoting patients' rights, preventing medical negligence, patient safe care, basically. So in the course of my advocacy, I had to found an organization, Lawyers Arise for the People Initiative. Now, what we do at Lawyers Arise, I began to train other lawyers to become patients' rights advocates. Not just becoming advocates, but also seeking redress, legal redress in the event of medical negligence. Because of the knowledge gap, when issues occur, firstly, patients, victims do not know where to go and make reports. They do not know how to report. So the few lawyers that are briefed do not have the technical expertise to pursue that legal redress effectively and get justice for the victim. So I began to build capacity along that line, trained, and began to do stuff. And when I started, I was a lone voice. And some people had not heard, a good number of people have not heard that type of stuff. So when I introduced myself as a medical lawyer, some will mention, "What do you mean by medical law? So tell me about it." And that's how we have grown. Along the line, we had to found a Safe Health Medical Legal Consult, which is a consultancy firm for medical legal services. Under that platform, we train lawyers to seek redress. We train hospital personnel to mitigate and reduce medical negligence issues around patients' rights violation. So that's what we do on that front. I have served and continue to serve in different capacities. I'm a member of the World Association for Medical Law. I'm a member of the Bioethics Society of Nigeria. I am a member of the Institute of Medical and Health Law, where I serve as a public relations officer on one hand, and also the secretary of the training committee of the institute. That institute is the only umbrella body of legal practitioners and healthcare professionals with the objective of reducing medical negligence in Nigeria. So under Institute of Medical and Health Law, we have lawyers as members, we have nurses, doctors, pharmacists, laboratory scientists as members, because prior to the existence of that institute, doctors or healthcare professionals see lawyers as their enemies. So whenever anything happens and you want to engage a lawyer, it takes a different tone altogether. But with that institute, we come together to discuss a common goal, the safety of the patients, because the patient is king. If there is no patient, there will be no healthcare facility. So I also serve currently as the chairman of the Medical and Health Law Committee of my branch of the Nigerian Bar Association in Abuja, the federal capital of Nigeria. So under the platform of the Medical and Health Law Committee of Nigerian Bar Association, Gariki branch, we train lawyers every month. We bring up topical medical legal issues. We have, in fact, this month on Friday, we will be discussing universal health coverage and health insurance and how to get Nigerians to take advantage of that to mitigate out-of-pocket expenses for healthcare. We have discussed issues around organ donation. We have discussed issue last month. We looked at forensic medical investigation, looking at DNA and autopsy. We have discussed a lot. We have discussed issues around surrogacy. We have discussed policy formulation, strengthening the healthcare policy, and all that. So that is what we are doing from this side to contribute to safe care in Nigeria and by extension, Africa. Thank you very much. Tonight, I've been given a topic which is basically medical law in healthcare practice in Africa. And with the subtopic, structuring our health laws for accountability, patients' rights, and innovation. So the aspect of my presentation you talked about was innovation and a little of accountability. So I'm going to zoom in firstly into patients' rights. Then if I have time, I say if I have time for two reasons. One, my internet provider is down, showing me signal, even though as we speak, it is plugged. Then secondly, well, let's see how far we can go. Let me save time. So as I said earlier, I am not at my base. I picked a wrong flash, but I will go ahead to do my presentation without the slides. So we are going to do a little exercise. I am of the opinion that medical negligence, especially in Nigeria and by extension Africa, that everybody have been affected directly or indirectly as a result of medical malpractice, medical negligence, medical error, or patient's rights violation. And whenever I have opportunity to teach or make a presentation, I start with this exercise, which we are going to do now. Dear participants, please, we are going to make this as participatory as possible. If you know anybody, firstly, is there anybody here who knows someone who died as a result of medical negligence? Please raise your hand. If you are on this platform and you know someone who died as a result of medical malpractice, the person went to hospital and the doctor made a mistake, the nurse made a mistake, the lab scientist made a mistake, something went wrong and the person died. Please kindly raise your hand. I can see Christian. Okay, it's only Christian. Christian Uzere. I hope I got the name right. Okay, I can see Okongu Chidebere. Okay, only two people have had that ugly experience. Wow. It is good to know that the rate has reduced. If only two people out of 35 of
Yeah, our speaker is not here, so we just have to wait for him briefly. Then yeah, we know what to do. Okongwu Chidebere, do you want to say something? Do you want to ask something so we can interact to keep the floor busy? Okay, so thank you so much. I don't know how far we're going to wait because okay, he's back. He's back. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, apologies. It is not network challenge. It's the battery of the Wi-Fi. Is the battery. So it's low. I'm going to appeal that we just maybe Osinachi, you just hold brief for me for like 5 minutes. Let me turn this off and let it just boost a little. I'll turn it on. Okay, this is from my end. This is 8:49. Can I come back on 8:55? Just 5 minutes. Let me shut it down. Let it power a little. Once it comes on and I still have it plugged, it can sustain us reasonably, please. Thank you. Is that possible?
Okay,
Hello,
so
Mr.
this is it. Yeah, I'm with
Yes.
you. I'm just asking if, because it's not just about me, but the people here, what we have to do is also part of the medical law. We have to make plans for contingency plans. We need to prepare for contingency in case of.
Okay. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, I can hear you from here.
Okay. So what is the contingency plan? Because it's plugged. It's just
So,
I want it to have like one or well, let's continue whatever happens, maybe let's have your contingency plan while I continue.
there's no contingency plan. I think we can just make it interactive and then see how far we can go because of time, for the interest of time, right?
Yes, I won't waste time. I just want us to discuss. So firstly,
okay,
what is patient's rights? I know some of you or some of the participants, if you have any comments in the chat box, if you're hearing for the first time, also let us know what patient's rights are. If you do know any patient's rights, let us know. But while I wait for your response, I would say that this is my personal no clear-cut definition of patient's rights. Rather, what I found out were a list to this, right to that, right to privacy. And I struggled for years to get it. 2019, 2018, I came up with the definition I'm about to tell you now, my own definition of patient's rights. And I say that patient's rights simply refers to those rights that guarantee professional, quality, transparent, and safe care delivery to a patient, as well as respect for the dignity of the person of the patient in the course of receiving care. So, if you look at that definition, you will see 5 components. The rights that guarantees 1, professional, 2, safe, 3, transparent. Then you look at respect, quality. These 5 components must be there. It has to be professional care. It has to be safe care. It has to be quality care. It has to be transparent care. And it has to respect the dignity of the person of the patient. So if you have given professional, safe, quality, and transparent care, but you dehumanize the patient, you have not respected the patient's rights. Once you remove any component from these 5, the patient's right is not complete. That definition is not complete. Now, what are the sources of patient's rights? Patient's rights, because we are discussing African context, but patient's rights is not it does not affect that you are born and you are a human being, you are human. You have some rights that are intrinsic to your person. Now, when we now discuss patients' rights, you see that there are different sources. We have international conventions like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have like the Geneva Convention, Hippocratic Oath for doctors, the Lisbon Declaration. These are international conventions that are not limited to Africa, but they apply globally. Then we have maybe domestic legislations. For time's sake, we have the Constitution of Nigeria, 1994. Now we come to chapter 4 of that constitution. We have what we call fundamental human rights. The most important of those set of rights, which is number 1 patient right, is right to life. It is only a living person that can enforce rights. If the patient is dead, the patient has no rights to enforce. So if you have a dead patient, you can go to court to seek redress. The beneficiaries will be the victim's relative, but not the patient himself. So under chapter 4 of the Constitution, we have such rights as right to life, freedom of movement, respect to the dignity of human person. You have freedom, right to privacy, and all that. Now, you come to still under domestic laws, we have acts of the National Assembly. That's federal laws. And that is where our National Health Act comes in. Now, because we are discussing Africa, we can spread that to national health. In fact, in my slide, I have the National Health Card of South Africa, I have the National Health Act of Ghana. I have the National Health Act of Kenya. And now this is specific federal law that governs specifically healthcare service provision. It regulates healthcare service delivery. Now, the fundamental rights I mentioned under the Constitution also apply in other constitutions of the world, not just Africa. You will see those fundamental rights in the Constitution of Ghana. You will see it in the Constitution of South Africa. You see it in the Constitution of Kenya. You see it in the Constitution of Rwanda. Then, when we now talk about federal laws, acts of the National Assembly, these are laws made by the legislature at the federal level to regulate healthcare service delivery. And within those laws, we now have some aspect of it that guarantees or provides certain rights to the patients. That's another source. Then for us in Nigeria, we also have different state laws because we have the federal legislature is there and we have the state legislature. So some laws apply. The federal legislature makes law for the nation, but with specific application to the Federal Capital Territory. Then if the law needs to be applicable in a state, the state legislature has to make equivalent of that law. So when we now come to the states, we have Lagos State is leading in that area. We have laws like the HIV and AIDS anti-discrimination law, Lagos States, we have it. Then we have the compulsory treatment and care for victims of gunshots, Rivers State 2022. Now, we also have the equivalents at the federal level, but I said because of time. The National Health Act is there. The compulsory treatment and care for victims of gunshots is there. The HIV/AIDS anti-discrimination law is there for states. At the federal level, Anti-Discrimination Act is there. We have the Mental Health Act is there. We have the National Health Insurance Authority Act is there. So there are different laws at the federal level. And some states have domesticated these laws. And in these laws, there are different rights of the patients. Then another source of law of patients' rights is the various code of medical ethics of healthcare professionals. You have the code for nursing, you have for doctors, you have for pharmacists, you have for laboratory scientists. Inside those, there are regulations and rules. They have written in there how they are supposed to relate with the patient, how they are supposed to carry out their responsibilities, how they are supposed to carry out their obligations towards the patients, how they are supposed to engage with the patients. Now, that's another source. Then we have our court case law, where issues arise and the patient goes to court. The decision of that court in that particular case becomes a binding precedent. From there, we extrapolate some rights of the patients. Then we have also our adjectival law of contracts. Doctor-patient relationship is primarily a contract relationship. We have law of torts. That's where we get medical negligence from, the duty of care, from law of torts. So our adjectival law also provides some elements of patients' rights. Now, what are these rights? I have mentioned right to life. Everything you have under chapter 4 of the Constitution, except maybe right to immovable property, right to property, yeah. Apart from that, every other thing you have there constitutes patients' rights. So one is right to life. Now, the courts have held in different cases that denial of healthcare, those cases were particularly for prison inmates. Denying them access to healthcare was a breach of their rights to life. Then we also have our own African charter, because we are discussing Africa here. You look at Article 5, you look at Article 6, you look at Article 16, they all provide patients' rights for our African how do I this African citizens, so to speak. Then you look at another very key and very important right that is being abused mostly in Nigeria. A patient has a right to treatment in emergency situation. That's Section 20 of the National Health Act. Now,
Yeah, I think we just have to wrap it up because this is just one of the things that happened in the um in our continent, when almost everything seems to be against you, no matter irrespective of your intention and how you want to do your thing. So I think we just have to maybe in subsequent program, I'll bring him in to maybe chip in one or two things based on what he intended to discuss. So thank you so much, guys. Next program, the next session, we're going to have more interaction on this, and he's going to be invited to give more talk. Maybe that time the slide will be available and the flash will be available, all that. So thank you so much, guys, for your time, because we can't keep waiting. Hospital is challenging us to do something great. I'm going to select people at the end of this program so that we start doing something. We are ways behind. And you can see why I'm not patient with a whole lot of things. Good night, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Stay safe.